all all of these things we put into place to, bring contributors to the screen, something that I'm very passionate about. So it's been brilliant working with the charity to really turn the camera around and support all of us. So it's for everybody who works in the industry. So I'm just going to share my screen now. So hopefully you can see the presentation. Before we start, we just have to say that we are aware of all of the fantastic work already happening in production companies in order to bolster mental health and well-being support across productions. So we just start there. And also, before we start, we just go right back to the beginning. As it's such a small group and I can see all your faces, if you're happy to just pop your hands up, how many people have heard of the Film and TV charity? Great. Okay, so we've got some people to inform. Wonderful. So this next slide we share is just about the services we offer, really, what we do. So it's worth just pointing out that we are in our 101st year. People are often surprised about that. We started as a benevolent fund for ex-talent from the industry. In about 2015, we started to engage a lot more with the industry. Hopefully, you've seen some posts on social media if you don't know too much about us. Or, yes, we're trying our hardest to really engage with the industry we represent. It's worth saying when we say industry, it's film, TV, and cinema across the whole of the UK. You can see on the left-hand side of this screen then all of the support we offer for individuals. Just going to outline it. Hopefully some of you may be aware already, but hopefully fill in some blanks for other people as well. So the main thing to point out is on the bottom of the slide here, which is our support line. So you can see it's 24/7. So this is for anybody who works behind the camera. People do often ask if this support extends to contributors or talent. Absolutely not, unfortunately. It's just for all of us, crew and production workers. There doesn't have to be any signposting. You can access that phone number for support at any time of the day. You don't have to be phoning for work, related issues. It can be just used as what we call a listening ear. However, if you do need any support, we do have further signposting. So I'll just run you through the information. I will be sharing the deck after it will be disseminated. So don't worry about scribbling things down if you are. But it's just a really good way to highlight what we do. So if anybody would like any legal advice, we do offer free legal advice. So that could be freelancers finding out a bit more about their contracts, those kind of issues. We have financial advice. We run lots of workshops. We also have our grant system where we offer individuals £500 per application. So they're what they call stopgap grants, and that's much easier to say at lunchtime than it is at the end of the day. And we're aware that £500, isn't going to pay someone's mortgage or bills for a whole month or anything like that, but it can be used as just a sticking plaster to help them out in that moment. So if anybody is struggling, or if you know anybody who might benefit for some financial advice, please point them our way through the phone number. We also have an in-house dedicated bullying and harassment advice line service. So just to point out right at the top now, that is not a whistleblowing line. It just really helps people if they are experiencing the issues, establish what bullying is, what harassment is, and then if there is any reporting process needed to be done, they guide them through that process away from a production company. It's not explicit on this slide at all, but we're really proud to be able to offer everybody access to 6 free counselling sessions within 2 weeks of phoning the support line. So, it's hard, if you are on the list with the GP, you would be waiting quite a long time for face-to-face therapy. So by phoning that number and, you have to be quite explicit. This is what I've recently found out that you are looking for support through counselling, talking therapy. We can then match you with a therapist within 2 weeks of phone call. So that's either in person or face-to-face. They offer CBT, but they do offer other therapies as well. So yes, it's something we're very passionate about. people letting people know this is a thing. Signposting is brilliant. It's a service we have. We've got information coming later how you can communicate that. But like I said, that's for everybody in the industry. And then finally, we have wellbeing advisors. So if somebody needs some help about potentially rewriting a CV, updating their CV, we're aware of how hard things are in the industry at the moment, with commissioning turned down. If people are maybe reskilling, moving left, right across the industry, we're here to help them support with their career. And then on the other side of the slide, then this is all the work we do. We call it upstream, so within the industry. So we have the whole picture toolkit, which I come on to shortly. I've said that about 3 times, which really helps create more mentally healthy productions. If you do follow us on LinkedIn, this is not a sales pitch at all, but it's a good place to see what we're up to. So hopefully, if you have seen, you may be aware of the Real Impact Partnership campaign. So we've just launched our second round of grants. So this is supporting Black and global majority mid-senior career level creatives who have maybe faced barriers throughout their career. So very simply, we offer £10,000 grants for individuals and 25,000 for organisations. Like I said, if you do click on our LinkedIn, you'll see all information about that. And then we are aware that not everybody knows who we are here at the charity, so fewer people know where we are. So we have what we call our freelancer hub in central London. So it's based in Soho. We have a really beautiful office, and our doors are open for everybody in the room. So if you're ever coming down to London, you need a working space, you can also hire some space. We have a boardroom in our office as well. We have our doors open for you to book space. Come in if you're looking to do some team meetings, maybe in between meetings in London. We're here for you. We would love to see your faces. It's always good to, yes, feel creative, like we're part of the industry as well by opening our doors. We can share information about how to do that afterwards as well. And then finally, quick show of hands again. Has everybody heard of the Looking Glass? Most people. Okay. Okay. So we have our research, which includes the Looking Glass. So I will be sharing some statistics shortly from our most recent report, which was put together in 2024, and then it was about a month or so ago now when we released those findings. So before we come on to that, you may be wondering, people don't often ask how we are funded. So it's important to point out that we are not associated with the government in any way. We are funded by the industry for the industry. So we have what we call major donors. It is everybody you would hope to see within that list: BBC, Channel 4, Netflix. However, we have what we call our industry friends. So this slide is not a complete list. It's just a selection really to go to show you that whether it's a big super indie, what they call them, a small independent, scripted, unscripted, whatever it may be, without the support from these labels, they donate to the charity in many different ways. We wouldn't be able to offer that support I just outlined. So before we move on, I mentioned the Looking Glass a few moments ago. We are going to move on to look at some statistics really from the most recent report. One of them does unfortunately reference suicide. So before I move on, if you'd like to turn off your camera or mute me, it takes a couple of minutes to go through, but it's really important to really explain why the whole picture toolkit was created. So I'm just going to move on now if anybody wants to turn me off. So I know some of you said you'd heard of the Looking Glass. So before we go through the statistics, just give you a little bit of context. So the first report was released in 2019. It's the only piece of research commissioned by us here at the charity, which really looks at mental health within our industry. It takes the temperature of that time to see how everybody is feeling. The first report was published in broadcast. They called a mental health crisis within the industry. Many people became aware of it then. It may be ringing a bell now if you weren't so sure if you heard of it. We've since had you can see here, the 22 report, and then we've just released the 24 report. So we had over 4,000 respondents this time around, and we have some key findings. If any of these are surprising, or we can talk about them afterwards, if you want any more context, please make a note or pop them in the chat. And as there aren't many of us now anyway, if you want to ask a question about these as we go, that's fine as well. So you can see 64% of people said they had considered leaving our industry due to mental health concerns. I guess really out of all the experience of talking to production companies, this may not come as a surprise. I'm sure you may know people who have either retrained, left the industry, or making attempts to. It's important to say that we all already know out of this 64%, 35% of those people have actually taken those first steps away from the industry, which is really sad to think of the talent we are losing. 41% then had directly experienced bullying or harassment within the workplace. There is a slight improvement here from the last report from 46%. But when you consider the numbers, that's still huge with people experiencing bullying or harassment. And then, most shockingly, I guess, which never gets easy every time we tell people about this survey, especially if this is the first time you've seen these statistics, 30% of our workers then considered taking their lives within the past year. So, when the survey was done within those past 12 months. So, this is an increase of 1% from the previous year or so. So it's just worth remembering if, we have around 50% of our workforce is freelance. So if you are crewing up, if you are looking to make fantastic future productions, it's worth remembering how vulnerable some people may be. And then you can see here 12% of our industry described the industry as a mentally healthy place to work, an increase of 1%. So it's around 1 in 10, which is not great. We've got more to do. However, this increases to 25% where respondents believe they have worked on a toolkit production. Some of you may be familiar with the toolkit, so I'm getting there on the next slide. So it's just evidence here really that it does work. It's the first time in the survey we've asked a question directly about the whole picture toolkit, so it's really reassuring. And then you can see only 39% of people felt they had the necessary skills or knowledge to support people in their teams with mental health issues. So it's so brilliant to hear Sian saying obviously how important mental health and well-being is, to the industry and how we need to look after each other. So the more people we can tell about the resource I'm about to introduce you to, the better, because it's all of our responsibility. So moving on then, we identified three underlying causes. So, what's quite unique about our industry? Why are these things happening? And the charity identified what they called the three C's. So, conditions, culture, capability. So, as production people, obviously, I don't need to tell you about conditions. It can be a really challenging industry to work in. If you're a freelancer, people say, it's all or nothing. So you're waiting around for your job, one comes along and everything else has to go, unfortunately, to the sidelines. So, that does include long hours, People, I've had experience myself being in my loft casting on a development for America. So I was working, very hard hours. It was really hard. It was quite isolating by myself as well. But, it's a job I love and thrive in, but it can have an impact on your mental health and well-being, especially for, long periods of time. We know that there are, really tight budgets. You still have to deliver the same content, but that does have an impact, for example, on team sizes, so that can add to stress across a production as well. And then in terms of culture, so obviously that does link directly with the statistics shared about bullying and harassment. Also, I guess it wouldn't really go amiss not to mention, the impact talent can have on productions and the quite unique relationship we have with them and their agents. And then finally, in terms of capability, so when I started here about 18 months ago, there was quite a clear production management skills gap. Be interested to know whether that's the same in Wales. So it can mean that people have been promoted beyond their means. So if they are struggling mentally, it's hard for them to access support, but equally support teams are if they are struggling as well. So it's a perfect storm, I guess. So essentially, out of all this research in 2019 and these quite shocking statistics, the charity reacted to them by putting together what they called a behaviour change campaign called the Whole Picture Programme. Out of that came the toolkit. So it takes about 10 minutes to get here, but hopefully you can understand, for the people who didn't know about the Film and TV charity, the support we offer and then why the toolkit was created. So, like I said before, we are more than aware of all the fantastic work already happening within the industry. The toolkit is essentially a website. Quick show of hands, has anybody heard of the toolkit before? Let's just see. I'm going to guide you through. Oh, brilliant. Okay, great. So I'm going to show you anyway. That's good to know. So essentially, it's a website, as you all know, free to access. It was designed by industry experts and subject matter experts across mental health, as you would expect, legal, HR, health, and safety. So it's currently split into these three production sections. We are more than aware, the more productions we meet and the more work we do with the toolkit, that maybe not all productions fit so neatly into this linear model. We have supported big sporting events, live productions, news, those kind of things, what maybe don't have this structure. However, each section does contain guides, actions, templates we've put together here at the charity for you to utilize, and links to existing industry work. So it's all in one place. Before, like I mentioned, I was a casting producer. I was looking for a wellbeing policy. You go on Google and it's really difficult to find. There's hundreds from the BFI onwards. In the toolkit, it's all under one roof for you to be able to navigate into trusted sources. Also, because it's a shared responsibility to really look after each other, we love to engage with senior editorial and production staff across a production to really help recommend resources for them to use. Something like Albert is brilliant. It obviously looks at sustainability. However, that is seen strictly as a production management job. So we need both sides of the coin to engage with us at the toolkit and also be led from the top. So it's brilliant to tell you about it today. If anybody would like us to meet a production company, we always start by meeting senior leadership because it is about culture change sometimes and culture setting. And then finally, because the toolkit is, like I said, a website, we can update future versions from industry feedback. So since I've been here, for example, I know we've changed quite a few resources. We've updated them due to the sexual harassment law change and also from feedback from the industry. So some things don't work for every single production. So it's really good for us to learn the experiences from the productions we support. So that's essentially why it was created. This is what it looks like. So I'm sure so encouraged to know that some of you will obviously be familiar with this. This is what we call our landing page. We're going to have a look at some resources, just talk you through a few things available from each stage, really. So pre-production is really the best time to sit down with the team and really think about the mental health and wellbeing support you can offer across your production. The best place to start is to agree your wellbeing plan. So within a wellbeing plan, all of the resources are here within this page. It's all about setting the agenda right, setting your stall out, putting mental health and wellbeing at the top of every senior meeting. Thinking about the resources you can offer across your production. You just mentioned the wellbeing facilitator role. So does your production, are you lucky enough to have one of those? You know, who they are, how they can be contacted, what they can offer in terms of support across the production, how they can be contacted, all of those things. Think about setting your production and company values. So this is a really good way to start before you send out information to your freelancer crew, you know, what you can offer in terms of support and also what you expect in return from them. But all of these things considered with the risks in the industry, a good place to start is to put together a standalone mental health risk assessment. So here's the question. Has anybody had experience of putting together a standalone mental health risk assessment before? No, one or two. Oh, brilliant. So it's a very, very new tool in the industry. We're aware that productions often have mental health risk considerations within a standard RA, you know, there'll be a section. But we create a template here at the charity. It's free to download off the website, which gives you a guide about how to put together a standalone mental health assessment. So that's brilliant. Like I said, it's a very new tool. So knowing that someone's had the experience, that's good to hear. So here on this slide, just some pointers. Every production is very different, but it's just some things you can consider and the controls you can put in place to mitigate against some of these things. So, like I've said myself, are you working abroad? I've done that plenty of times, you know. So how do you ensure that, you know, team office hours are, consistent. If you're having a team in America or somewhere like that and somewhere in the UK, between bases, how can you make sure communication is really good between the two? Are you working with vulnerable contributors? We do know obviously the impact that can have. So, how can your wellbeing facilitator, for example, help with that? Do you have mental health first aiders? Can you offer your team any training? What can you do to ensure those conversations aren't triggering? Are you dealing with sensitive content? So obviously this is something we know can have a huge impact on individuals. We talk about vicarious trauma, but simple things you can do. So labeling your rushes, with the content before it goes into the edit, for example. Thinking about who needs to really look at that footage. Does everybody have access to it? Or who should be looking at that? And then also, yes, think about your genre. Are you filming at night? That can have an impact. If people are staying over, are they comfortable in their hotels? Do you have rest days? Have you planned in between the shoot to really give people away from that production? So, like I said, we have a template on our website. It's long, it's about 14 pages. People across many different productions and genres have used it in different ways. So, it's really good to, yeah, learn from productions once we have those debrief meetings, like I mentioned before. Um, a really good thing then to do is communicate all of the support you can offer to your production staff. I can already see a few people squinting at the screen. So this slide, it can be look like a slight headache, but it's something we've put together. It's called a production wellbeing pack. Just to say, we've worked with a fair few Welsh production companies who have translated these as well. So it's really good to see them utilising this resource. It's essentially a mental health calling card for your production. So it outlines all of the support you offer on that production, those key people, make sure that everybody has access to your bullying harassment policy. So if you think about a freelancer maybe experiencing an issue, don't leave it up to them to go forward and ask where they can have help and support, who they should report to. Make sure it's really transparent here. Similarly with your wellbeing policy as well, we have links on our website to help you create a wellbeing policy if that's something you don't have. And then also, if you are working on a production with an EAP, Employee Assistance Program, make sure this is communicated. People often say, oh, I've seen something on our intranet, or I've heard about this thing, I'm not too sure what it is. Even if you feel like you've told people 100 times, there's no reason you can't communicate all of these resources you have in your production. Maybe at different points within the production, maybe on onboarding, before the first shoot, and then remember to extend this into the edit as well. So it's just a really handy resource. It probably takes about 45 minutes to an hour or so to put together, and then you can just communicate this with your team. So many productions do it in different ways, but essentially we do know how many attachments you get when you start a job, right? You get your contract, you get everything else. This may get forgotten. So you may drop it into a WhatsApp group. You may remind people throughout the course of the production. The big thing to remember is you can never really tell people too many times about the support you can offer. You never know at that time you remind somebody about us or your EAP or a mental health first aider or your wellbeing facilitator at the time they may be struggling and need to reach out for help. So it's a really good useful resource. It takes about 45 minutes to put together. And then finally, then in pre-production, we would recommend people considering the Working Well with Me. So this is a resource put together by Mind, the mental health charity. It's essentially 10 voluntary questions designed to see if your crew have any wellbeing needs that you can facilitate across the production. So it's not about reasonable adjustments or disability access riders, those kind of things. It's just little simple tweaks you can make across the production to make people's lives easier. There are 10 questions. Obviously, you don't have to send them all. I'm not going to go through them all because we don't have too long left. But essentially, it helps you learn. So you can see here, number one, are there any details you'd like to share about your current working situation? So this could be something in an interview situation somebody doesn't really want to talk about, and then they don't have the right opportunity after they're on the job to find a way to talk about caring responsibilities, parenting needs, those kind of things. So it just opens up a conversation. Lots of production companies utilize this form in different ways. I know I said that about the production pack, but essentially these can just be used as a guide of conversation starters between a line manager and their employees. So if you're leading a team, you could just use this as a guide for your check-ins. You could use it as a form of onboarding, and then if anything confidential is raised, you could go to HR to sort those issues out. So there's lots of different ways. It's very popular. It's the most popular resource from the toolkit. Our CEO, Marcus Ryder, before he started in an official capacity at the charity, he shared his with us, our team. There's about 35 of us working at the charity, just so we could learn a little bit more about him. It was brilliant before we met him to read if he, was facing any barriers or any struggles or challenges he may have, so we can all support him. So it's a really preventative resource. It does mean people don't then fade away across the contract and take time off. So like I said, we'll share the resources afterwards. So in terms of production guides, then just got a few to highlight here. We've spoken about the impact contributors can have on production, thinking about the support you can put in place. It's becoming increasingly popular actually for productions to use a psychotherapist to obviously, work with the contributors, but then offer that support to the team as well. Obviously, that does mean there's a bigger resource to do that, but it's becoming a lot more popular to think about, if you're interviewing that contributor, their story inside out, and then to offer the support back to that team member like we would do for the contributor as well. And then in terms of post-production, we know how busy productions are. You start, everything gets going. Things can get slightly forgotten. So just remember to communicate your wellbeing plan into the edit as well. We would recommend 3 to 5 toolkit resources across each production. Essentially the 3 we just spoke about, and we have a fantastic resource written by a psychiatrist called How to Talk to Your Team About Mental Health. So think about the language right at the start, how you're setting your intentions for that production. And then you can see here another really quick win, which is easy to do. Copy and paste our email signature onto all of your, our phone number onto all of your call sheets or email signatures, just to signpost people. Not everybody knows who we are as well. So it's always good to just keep reminding people about what we can offer. So now I'm just going to play a short film for about 3 minutes, which gives us a chance to hear from the industry who have been using the toolkit before just wrapping up. So hopefully everybody will be able to hear the sound.
TV is a brilliant industry to work in. It's fun, it's creative, it's exciting, but that does occasionally come with high pressure and stress, long working hours.
Our jobs can be extremely rewarding, but the flip side of that is it can be very, very stressful as well, doing what we do. Historically, we've not been great at looking after each other, so I do believe that the whole picture toolkit would just help us really make sure that we're looking after the well-being of our teams, providing the necessary support and guidance so that everyone has a really positive experience and we help improve everyone's mental health.
The benefit I think that using the toolkit will bring to production is that in my case it allows me to speak openly about areas in which I need support whilst at work, but also the production company that I'm working for, it allows them to create a safe space and a safe environment for me to share that with them.
The whole picture toolkit has just given us more and more resources to help embed wellbeing as part of our culture. So for me, as a manager, the wellbeing pack has been particularly useful because it's enabled us to structure using the tools from pre to post production. So we now have a wellbeing memo which goes out at the beginning of every production. We have a wellbeing risk assessment which goes out.
The whole picture toolkit helps assess potential problems within the industries itself, within productions, within companies potentially, kind of in a formatted and consistent way, sort of stepping stones. So you can go through things and not miss out on your assessments. Mini guides on the website are very, very useful and great reminders of the things to consider as you go through the stages of production. Mental health risk assessment as part of this process is a useful tool for discussing what elements of production might be challenging, might cause problems or issues, and hopefully being able to reduce those as much as possible.
I found the initial discussion with the toolkit team really beneficial at the beginning of production because it's a really good moment to sort of stop and pause and discuss what the challenges might be and what resources you should put in place to best support the team.
The toolkit is easy to access, it's brilliantly presented, and the great thing is that The experts have done a lot of this work and research for you, so if you want to improve mental health on your production, it's just a fantastic place to start.
I've had personal experiences on production where the toolkit really helped me, and this was when I was going through a personal loss. The Working Well With Me questionnaires really helped me to identify areas in which I was struggling with. It helps me to put my feelings into words, and by answering the questions, it provided the seniors in my team areas in which they can spot signs of lack of motivation or stress and how they can really help me at work.
What the Whole Picture Toolkit does, it gives production companies and broadcasters the chance to change the landscape of TV by implementing these tools right from pre-production and seeing them through to post-production.
I've had moments in my career, as I'm sure many of us have, where things can get on top of you and get a bit too much, and thankfully my colleagues were massively supportive during those times. So it's fantastic to have a resource like the Whole Picture Toolkit that all of us, regardless of our position in the industry, can make use of.
You can minimise the mental health impact of the work, of the environment, of the production, of the things that you're putting in place. And the toolkit and people at the charity we speak to can provide the information and advice that we may not have thought of. So I suppose ultimately, why would you not use it?
Wonderful. So hopefully that brings it to life, really, to hear from people who have been using the toolkit so far. So just a few things to point out here. So all employers then, so all production companies, have a legal duty of care to reduce undue stress in the workplace. So that's a really good reason why to implement something like the Whole Picture Toolkit. Also, we need to combat attrition. So as I said earlier, 64% of our colleagues have considered leaving the industry. We need a well workforce to make fantastic productions. And then finally, to combat presenteeism. So it took me about a month to learn how to say that. I don't know if anybody's heard of it before, but it's essentially where people are coming to work every day but are struggling mentally. So you're not getting 100% of their talents if you're an employee, and they're not giving 100% of themselves to their job. So you can see here, for every £1 spent providing support to improve mental health and well-being of employees, returns an investment of £5. So obviously hugely preventative there. So finally, we've engaged with over 130 production companies. You may recognise some from your part of the world on there, and we have had the toolkit now used in almost 290 productions there. So that's it. So in terms of an ask, we have 4 stages really. So if you are on a production at the moment or running a production company, would like to meet us, Barbara's going to pop some contact details in the chat now, just with an email. So we essentially like to meet company seniors at a production company first, before hopefully identifying a toolkit production to meet the senior editorial and production leads. And then we would recommend some toolkit resources for them to use. I would send over an email. There's 4 engagement producers here at the charity to help support different formats and different genres. And then throughout the life of that production, we love to have check-ins and debriefs at the end to find out how toolkit use is going. So that's enough from me. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now and just have a look or invite any questions. So thank you so much for all of your time listening.